All right, y'all, how we feeling? Another NBA draft in the books, and whenever I think of NBA drafts, I always look forward to all the great surprises we have in store. Of course, when it comes to the official mock drafts, we have some of the smartest people when it comes to college basketball, and also people who are very locked into these particular teams. So, a lot of the time, if you follow the mock drafts, there's not a ton of surprises, and in many ways, this year was a year like that. But there were certain surprises, and certainly ones that I personally wanted to talk about. So today in this video, we're just going to be going over the top three ones for me, biggest surprises. And I guess we can just go ahead and start with Cooper Flagg. Number one overall. Whoa, you think that's maybe a reach by Dallas? I don't think anyone could have foreseen that coming. In all seriousness, though, yeah, the top four of the lottery pretty much went exactly how you might expect. The lottery in general, not a ton of surprises, but a few as you get further down, and we'll talk about one in particular. But yeah, it was interesting. After the draft, I went and looked up a mock draft, and I just wanted to compare and contrast. And I went to ESPN's, and at first I thought I straight up had the wrong article, and it was just listing what actually happened because they got the top four exactly right. I mean, anyone could have called Flag, but then they said Harper to the Spurs, VJ to the Sixers, and Knuppel to the Hornets. And interestingly enough, the first change they had, the one thing that was different was they had Fears going at 5 to the Jazz. And of course, he ended up landing with the Pelicans, which was not a surprise because I think most of the mock drafts actually had the Pelicans taking Fears. There was a lot of talk that the Pelicans really liked Fears and wanted him, and it was also just seemed like he would be the best available at that position. So, myself personally, as a Pelicans fan, before we get into things, I guess I'll just say, yeah, not surprised we took Fears, and I'm pretty happy with it. Malawak was also available. We could have taken him, and a lot of people were thinking he would be the best available. But I'm I do think the bigger position of need for us was at guard, especially with DeJounte Murray injured. And I know a lot of people have concerns about Jeremiah Fears shooting, and he is very young, probably going to be pretty raw. But with the injury to DeJounte Murray, he's probably going to get some opportunity. So hopefully he takes advantage of that opportunity and can actually contribute pretty well. But maybe a bit more of a project. Regardless, I think he's a good guy to have. And Malawak, I'm also very high on Malawak in general. However, we do just have Eve Misi, so I wasn't like super big on us going out and getting another center. But that being said, the first surprise that we are going to cover in this video is none other than Malawak himself. And yeah, I was surprised he fell all the way to 10, which I mean isn't a big drop, but a little while ago I had people thinking he could be top 5 even. And I guess it just kind of depends on how much you value defense because yeah, as an offensive prospect, he is still fairly pretty raw. Only put up about 8.5 points at Duke, but he offers so many other things. Just a very versatile defender. I mean, he's huge, and he knows how to use his size. And he may not be the most skilled center, but I think he is a pretty smart center. So, yeah, curious that he fell all the way to 10. But I think for the Phoenix Suns, they were very fortunate that this happened because obviously a huge position of need for them. I mean, I can't believe that end of last season for the whole 34 games that they had Nick Richards. They were starting Nick Richards at center, which I don't just mean to dunk on Nick Richards, but that doesn't seem exactly like the best winning formula for the starting five. And going into this next season, it's like, okay, the Suns, they've gotten even smaller after trading away Kevin Durant for a guard, and I guess Dylan Brooks isn't quite a guard, but he is pretty small. And then yeah, I was like, okay, are they going to go out and get a center? And today, I guess they went out and got two. Because while we're at it, I guess I'll just mention the trade that really surprised me. I missed the news at first that they got Mark Williams out of Charlotte, and obviously Mark Williams was going to be traded to the Lakers. It's like the first time in a long time we've had a trade like undone after the fact, and very weird and concerning that he didn't pass that physical. And yeah, I guess I'm not too surprised he got traded after that, but kind of unfortunate for Charlotte because, well, obviously, like I said, it's a huge position of need for Charlotte as well. And before they got Mark Williams, it was a fairly big concern about who their center going forward would be. And right now, if you're Charlotte, you feel good about adding Knuppel to LaMelo Ball. And but it was interesting. Mark Williams now going to Phoenix, and Phoenix they traded back, and I feel bad I can't pronounce the dude's name at all, but that 131-year-old guard is now back going to the Hornets. I guess they just really wanted him back, which I think is odd. He averaged like 35% from the floor, but maybe he's a good culture guy. Very curious about that. But regardless, now Phoenix, they have Mark Williams, but I wouldn't be surprised if Malawak could maybe fight him for that starting center spot. Because, and the weird thing is, Malawak isn't quite as good of a rebounder, at least statistically, as you might think. You know, huge amount of size, but only 6.5 rebounds. And I guess Duke, they just had a lot of other guys who could rebound really well, so maybe you don't hold that against him very much. But maybe if Mark Williams proves to be a better rebounder initially, he will keep that starting spot. But Malawak, just a super versatile defender, definitely someone that the Suns need. I mean, I don't know how much of a defender Kevin Durant is at this point, but at the very least, he was a tall guy who was mobile and shifty. And yeah, I just think this is a great, great pickup for Phoenix. And they're lucky he kind of fell this far because yeah, I did think he probably deserved to go a bit higher. And like I said, a lot of people, the ESPN, they had the Pelicans taking him at 7. And like I said, that could have been cool, but I probably do prefer Fears, even if I'm a little bit concerned about Fears shooting. In general, I think things worked out pretty well. And while I'm not a big fan of the Suns, I don't know. I really just hate to look at teams that have like a big gaping hole at a particular position. So in some ways, I am relieved to see that they addressed that. And then going forward, I guess we talked about the Pelicans a lot. A big surprise for me as a fan was going out and actually trading a pick to get Derek Queen. And it was interesting when the Hawks, it looked like the Hawks were drafting Derek Queen. I was like, okay, cool. You know, they just got KP. They still have Onyeka Okongwu, I think. And so that's good big man rotation. But hey, bolster the big man rotation even more. Obviously, Atlanta has some good guards in Trae Young and Dyson Daniels, and then they have wings like Jalen Johnson. So it made sense to me to bring in a guy like Derek Queen who maybe provides more of an offensive punch than, say, Okongwu does, potentially at least. But yeah, Derek Queen, interesting guy as kind of like a more traditional power forward slash center as far as scoring in the post and just having a very crafty, deep bag of tricks within the 3-point line. Outside the 3-point line, yeah, it is a little bit concerning. He's going to the Pelicans now, and it's like, if he's going to be playing alongside Zion, you'd really probably like him to space the floor a little bit better. And his shooting numbers in college are abysmal from outside. But I've heard some Pelicans fans tonight posit that perhaps this is the Pelicans already looking ahead to the beyond Zion era, picking up 2 guys in the draft who aren't great shooters in Fears and now Queen. Could be interesting. At least for the foreseeable future, it looks like they're probably going to be playing alongside Zion. But yeah, it's a cool pick. It's an interesting pick. A lot of people are really concerned about Derek Queen's defense. And I don't know. That's just the one thing I keep hearing and hearing and hearing about him is as good as he might have, as good as potential he might have offensively, defensively, he's like a 0. But looking at his college statistics, he averages a steal and a block. And I didn't watch a ton of Maryland games other than the tournament, but I don't know. I feel like people could be underrating him defensively a little bit. I mean, a steal and a block is not nothing. And of course, just the big thing with this trade is the fact that we sent Atlanta an unprotected pick for next year. Next year in a draft that could be, from what everyone's saying, quite excellent. And I feel like no matter how much you like Derek Queen, yeah, that is hard to justify. And hopefully Derek Queen will be a really solid player. But simply to so far out, and I know it's like anything could happen, and you would want a team to maybe kind of bet on yourself a little bit, like, yeah, we're going to make the playoffs. But the fact that it is the most favorable of Milwaukee and New Orleans, I mean, do you really think that? I mean, if the Bucks trade Giannis, this could be a little scary. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little nervous about just not having a pick in 2026 because I think how it works is the pick swap is included and we just trade the pick in general. So Atlanta's going to be able to choose whichever is more favorable between New Orleans and Milwaukee. But if they choose not to do the pick swap, either way they get our pick. So yeah, interesting. But welcome to New Orleans, Derek Queen. And the biggest surprise for me was, yeah, not where Derek Queen was drafted. I mean, I think 13 is fairly reasonable, but just simply the fact that the Pelicans went out and got him and were willing to give up a pick of potentially so much value to do so. And then finally, yeah, Yakachunas, he fell as well, a little more than I expected. I mean, I think ESPN, they had him going like 11, and he ended up falling all the way to 20, and the Heat pick him up, and this seems like a pretty logical fit to me, just as far as like the type of players that the Heat like to pick. I mean, obviously for the past few seasons, the Heat have been just kind of one of those sort of playoff teams, so they frequently got like the 19th, 20th pick or somewhere in that range, and so they've picked up some interesting project players like Jaime Jaquez last year, or the year before that, who in the couple of seasons of Jaime Jaquez, I'm fairly high in his potential. I think he's the right kind of guy for the Heat to develop. Not quite there just yet. Maybe regressed a little bit this past season, but Jaime Jaquez was a cool pick, and as well, Nikola Jovic maybe it's taken even a little more time to develop, but I kind of sort of see the vision of what the Heat are doing here with those particular players that they've been taking lately, and Yakachonis is probably going to be another similar kind of project player because it seems like people really like from him his potential for playmaking, but it is kind of weird just all the turnovers. And I noticed Kevin O'Connor actually gave this pick a D plus, which I think seems a bit harsh, especially considering he was projected to be drafted so much higher. Like a lot of people were thinking he was a lottery pick. I heard Pelicans fans who wanted Yakachunas, and they're like, "Yeah, you want a real guy to run your offense. You don't want fears. You want Yakachunas." But he averaged. It is true he averaged almost as many turnovers as assists. He averaged, I believe, 3.7 turnovers, and then he had 4.7 assists. So yeah, a very interesting player. He does average almost a steal, so I mean I think he has some defensive potential capabilities, and I think he's somebody that Miami will probably do a pretty good job developing. He seems like their kind of player, so we'll see. But interesting he fell that far. I guess a lot of people were just concerned about the turnover issues. I think he had some games where he had like double-digit turnovers even, but yeah, in general, a pretty fun draft. Not kind of interesting that there were no big grand moves connected to anything. After the lottery, there were several players and picks moved around a little bit, which often does happen. But the last several drafts, it's been not much in the way of trades within the lottery itself. I guess the Pelicans picking up Queen, that was technically a lottery pick at 13, so that's like the one trade. I don't know. But regardless, lots more things to talk about. Wanted to give some thoughts on the draft, but in particular, want to talk about Cooper Flagg and the Mavericks. So stay tuned. And if you enjoyed this video at all, perhaps subscribe. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you all around.